Welcome into the Atlanta football party. I'm Jarvis Davis. Coming up on today's show, Javon Bullard and McConkey. Ooh, they better get ready to cash some checks.
This is Locked On Sports Atlanta, and it's time for the Atlanta Football Party, only on Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Into the Atlanta Football Party, your home for the best dogs talk. It's local insight you can't get anywhere else but right here at Locked On. I am your host, Tenitra Batiste, and alongside me, of course, are Jarvis Davis and Brian Gebhardt. The Atlanta Football Party is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. New customers, join today and you'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Now, today we will talk about a new superpower when we go between the hedges, potential superpower that is, and we'll talk about top dogs in the big game in next up. But first, it's the week that was for the dogs at the Senior Bowl, and it's a preview for another top round draft class. Now, the Senior Bowl and the senior game, senior week have come and gone. We know for sure one guy impressed, no question about it, McConkey. I know we talked about him a little bit last week, Jarvis, but ultimately he continued to impress throughout the week. We know, I think he only had the one reception for 15 yards, but doesn't matter. He did damage throughout the week. So if there's any other kind of impression that you had or takeaway that you had towards the end of Senior Bowl week, what was it for him? But of course, what was it for some of those other dogs as well?
If I could just start with McConkey, I think he has the opportunity to make a lot more money, right? Because, we got the combine coming up pretty soon.
Yes.
If I look at it like this. If that dude goes out there and run a 4.4, a 4.3-ish, the man might sneak into the first round. So I know we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But yeah, I think he has solidified himself. Like I said, he only had the one catch. But there were times he was open.
Yeah.
The quarterback just couldn't get it there. So, that was one of the things that also stood out to me down there. But I think overall, though, he's put himself in position to be able to, really, really make himself money. And then I think that, being able to talk about his injuries, and making sure the medicals all check out, and I think he'll be just fine. But I think another guy, real quick, is Javon Bullard. He really stood out to me. He's the guy. He got voted top deep safety down there by his teammates with the wide receivers and running backs. Those are the guys he was going up against. So those guys have no reason to be able to play favorites, right? So I think for him to be voted that way, it just lets you know that he's another guy that can potentially raise his stock as well.
Indeed. And Brian, as you walk away from a game that has so much significance for so many players that are just trying to shine, it's so good to hear and see that the dogs once again had such a great performance, such a great showing. Who kind of stood out for you?
Yeah, Javon Bullard was the name I wanted to talk about there as well. And it's, people have got to meet him and know him a little bit more. I think the thing that's so interesting about Javon Bullard is he's just such a smart football player where he's going to be able to fit in on any team. Like, he just understands the game so well. And he's one of those ball hawks. Like, he makes plays around the ball, which is what you want to hear from any defensive player, really, but especially when you're talking about someone at safety. So it's like, what a shocker, right? We went through Senior Bowl week, and the best college football team over the span of the last 3 years had Ladd shine on the offensive side and Javon Bullard shine on the defensive side. And so it wasn't a surprise to me at all with him being kind of like the person. And he had such a really kind of under the radar a year at Georgia, just based on all the other names that were talked about so much between Brock Bowers and the different kind of stars, if you will. So I'm really glad that he had that opportunity to shine. And then real quick on the Ladd McConkey front, it's wild. Like, this guy could really go in the back end of the first round. And it's just, I think what's most fun to me is you see all these draft lists and all these comparisons and all this type of stuff. And it's actually good because he's not being compared to just other white wide receivers. People are actually going out there.
I love it.
Like, what Chocolate got
it's like, here's the next Cooper Kupp or Julian. Right. Compared to someone who is not another white gentleman,
Right.
So best one I've seen so far is like maybe a slightly less physical Doug Baldwin, if he can project that level in the league, because that guy had a really, really good career. So it's cool to see the different comparisons for Ladd McConkey over the last week.
Oh my gosh, man. Yes. Like the DEI that you just inserted into the conversation, Brian, I absolutely love it, man. That's where we need to go, man. Stop comparing white guys to white guys. Because Cooper Kupp, I heard that comparison too, and I was just like, no, he doesn't even like he does. He doesn't. Cooper Kupp is like 6'2", 6'3".
Right. We don't need to qualify it. If you're a bad man, you're just a bad man. Period.
Exactly.
That's like Tyke Smith. We don't say, "Wow, he's good for a black guy." No, Tyke Smith just broke up 3 passes because dang it, he broke up 3 passes, and of course earned team MVP honors for the American team. But yeah, always good to see the Dogs kind of ball out. And like you said, Jarvis, this is sort of that tee up. This is like getting you ready for the combine. This is getting you ready for those pro days. And you really, really love to see it. But this is something that nobody on this Atlanta Football Party show is shocked about at all. Why? Because this Dogs program has developed a reputation for getting a lot of players drafted for these types of events and what they've done throughout the regular season and, of course, championship runs as well in this tenure or this time under Kirby Smart. So I'm going to run some of the names you guys already called. We already talked about Bullard. We talked about Smith McConkey. But there's Kamari Lassiter. There's Marcus Rosemy-Jacksaint, Zion Lowe, Kendall Milton, Dejon Edwards, Amarius Mims, Brock Bowers, Cedric Van Pran. I mean, that's literally a list of like 11 guys who could potentially go in the first round. It always depends, on whether a team is going to go for need or best player available. But the bottom line is, BG, that we're having a conversation about nearly a dozen players who are of that quality, that ilk, and have the ability to impact the team such that they would say, hey, maybe that's our first rounder.
Yeah, I think a lot of people wind up going in the second and third round from this list, like collectively. I think the ones that'll wind up sneaking in, I think it winds up being 4. I think it winds up being Kamari Lassiter. I think Ladd gets in there.
I would be shocked.
I think it's, and then obviously Brock Bowers, he's going to be a top 10 pick. And then Amarius Mims is going to be there as well, because there's this draft is, it's really rich at it's quarterback, it's wide receiver, and it's offensive tackle. And when that offensive tackle run starts, whether that's at like 5-6 or kind of later in that top 10, they're going to go off the board. And Mims is definitely going to be, I think, in that top 20, top 25. So I think it's minimum 3. I think it's maximum 5 in that first round. And like maybe outside chance we get 6. But I think there's a lot of round 2 picks from this group here of the seniors from Georgia.
Indeed. And Jarvis, it's interesting that BG said that, because that's what I was thinking about Ladd McConkey. He could sneak into that first round because, to your point, you've got such a run of QBs. Who's the QB throwing to? So, and then you have other teams like, and I'll use in the Arizona Cardinals, for example, you got a quarterback. He just needs some receivers to throw to. So, yeah, you can get a guy like Ladd that might, and I know Arizona's not deep in the first round, but you could certainly see him sneaking into a team similar to that, JD, who might have that need at receiver.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think that it's probably going to be an offensive heavy draft, period, in the first round. So I think that, when you have guys like Kamari Lassiter, who we know he's a first round talent, we know Amarius Mims is a first round talent. So, and we just talked about how Ladd can seriously jump into that first round. So I think BG was spot on. You're talking about 4 guys going in that first round. And then if Ladd McConkey goes in the first round, how about this one? It'll be the first wide receiver drafted in the first round for Kirby in the Kirby Smart era.
Kirby Smart's era. It's
that would be crazy.
Crazy.
Yes, absolutely. Especially with a guy like George Pickens coming out not too long ago, with the Pittsburgh Steelers. So it is. Yeah, that would be I'm very interested to see how the thing plays out.
However, no offense, Pickens, but I'm really kind of happy you fell to us. Anyway, thank you so very much for many returns. When we come back, we're going to talk about a superpower that is developing and whether or not that superpower is actually good for college football. We'll talk about it when we go between the hedges. This episode of our Atlanta Football Party is brought to you by FanDuel. Happy Super Bowl week to all who celebrate from FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. If you're like me, Super Bowl Sunday is all about scoring because, hey, I'm watching this game from a different perspective. I'm actually watching the game, but I do know some people like to just kick it on their couches because they're like, hey, this is what it's all about. Me just kind of sitting back and enjoying myself. Me taking in food. Although I will be honest, one of the guys on this show, he's actually got a mean brisket that he hooks up. So I'm looking forward to that. But also some of us look at the commercials, give it a thumbs up or thumbs down. Well, there's something else you should pay attention to. And that's the possibility of placing a bet that can get you some extra dollars. FanDuel has so many ways for you to end the season with a W or 2 or 3. Not only can you bet on who will win Super Bowl 58, be it the Chiefs or 49ers, FanDuel also has bets for which players will score a touchdown, how many points will be scored, and so much more. So new customers, join today, and you'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. FanDuel.com/lockedon is where you can sign up, and you can make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports partner of the NFL. All right, guys, we've been talking, dancing around it here and there about these superpowers and whether or not the Power 5 is going to become the Power 4, 3, 2, 1. Well, the SEC and Big Ten are forming or have formed an advisory group recently. It consists of the university presidents, chancellors, and ADs to, quote, address the significant challenges facing college athletics and how to improve the student-athlete experience. Now, this is major because it reflects sort of that relationship that's building with the two superpowers of those 5 Power 5 schools, right? The 2 wealthiest conferences, the 2 largest conferences, and their commissioners kind of determining where that balance of power is tilting in favor of the collegiate landscape. But let's just keep it real, in favor of the football landscape. So Big Ten Commissioner Tony Petitti and SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey have been working on what things look like based on their reaction to recent court decisions, pending litigation. I know we heard about the decision that was made in Massachusetts about what Dartmouth is and isn't, what their players are and are not. And so what they're basically going to do is kind of see if they can fix the ailments, transfer portal, NIL, all the fallout from it, where you see players just moving at will. It seems like one day a player is committed, the next day he's decommitted. Coaches are saying, you know what? I like to coach. I don't like to have to recruit players on the recruiting trail and then have to recruit and retain my own players. So all of that said, when you think, Brian, about these powers coming together to address the issues that are currently the challenges in college football, you think this is a good idea? You think they can actually bring about change?
I think they can, especially these 2 conferences. I mean, these are the powers that be. They're going to be the money makers, the money movers, if you will. And you mentioned football, and the other one's basketball, right? And
basketball too.
Teams that are going to be in the in these 2 conferences. I think this is the first real step, like actual step into breaking off completely and having this own governing body of we've got all the money. We're kind of the power makers. We're the movers. We're going to be the ones with the 2 massive TV contracts as well. So as long as they have those TV contracts, they're going to be able to figure this out. And hopefully it does wind up, I don't want the players to get screwed, because we just got to this point of NIL and people getting paid and making money off of it. As we talked about the last couple of weeks here on the Atlanta Football Party, like, you got to find a way to regulate this in some way. And it can't be just the Wild West and people, coming and going. So I think we're that first step of breaking off. And I think we're one step closer to unions, contracts, like real employees at these schools. Yep. And kudos to them for actually taking this step and heading in what I think will be the right direction.
Yeah, and it's an interesting timing, Jarvis, because it does come on the heels of that National Labor Relations Board making that decision on essentially seeing those Dartmouth players as employees. But also, Jarvis, intriguing timing based on the fact that I think maybe a month ago, the NCAA president came out saying that, hey, we're going to put some legislation in place too. I think this is a counter from 2 commissioners that might have a little more juice than him.
Oh, they got a lot more juice to him. Like BG mentioned, like, money is power, and the power is in the money. Like, because we know what moves meters. Like, we know that ESPN is not giving up those broadcasting rights anytime soon when it comes to the college football, specifically in SEC and the Big Ten, because we all know those are where the eyeballs are, and they're going to be there for quite some time. And I don't see that changing at any point. So when you think about those two commissioners, like the fact that they're coming together and forming this alliance and saying, hey, we need to figure something out, because the NCAA has been asleep for a very long time with all these archaic rules that they have in play. And I can't, as a head coach or assistant coach, I can't even pick my kid up and take him to go get him something to eat, right after practice. Like, this just makes no sense whatsoever, right? So all of these little silly little rules, it is the NCAA's fault. They had an opportunity to rectify this, and they chose to say, you know what, we're just going to enforce our little rules, and we're going to give you some violations and put you on probation, like the whole Tennessee issue going down there with Tennessee. All of those little things, it's just basically little fires that have been blowing away. And the NCAA has refused to do anything about it. So this is what we have. So now, you're not the little cash cow, the money you've been getting, for basically doing nothing, that's about to go away, because the Big Ten and the SEC have finally come to their sense and say, you know what? We don't need you.
We can do this, and we can do this better. And you're right. This is the conversation we've been having. And of course, we're all, you guys are formerly 99. I'm still 99. But I know many years ago, we had Ed O'Bannon on one of our shows. I'm talking, this was when I first started with the station. Gosh, I think that might have been 2013, 2015, 2016. That tells you, and I'm sure, guys, that there was conversation, commentary, and some commitment that could have been made even before Ed came on the show, because I think that was kind of either at the tail end of his case, or he'd actually won the case, whatever the case may be, no pun intended. I think, to you guys' point, you had time to fix this. You had more than enough time to fix this. And now you're just to me, it's like an uphill battle, an upstream battle. Speaking of which, National Signing Day sometimes is an uphill battle, whether it's early signing day or whether, like tomorrow, it's the official spring or winter version of National Signing Day that will mark the end of the 2024 football recruiting cycle. Now, a lot happened with letters of intent. It seemed like they didn't mean nothing. Seemed like there was drama everywhere. I don't even know if I want to say day one. It was really more like hour 1 minute one of the day, where you saw coaching changes, you saw transfer portal flips and flops. So ESPN came out with this list, and it was a list of the top 5 flip flops across all of college sports. And guess who landed twice in the top 5 of the conversation, Jarvis? Georgia, because we know about Dylan Raiola, who, number 1 pocket passer in the class, number 11 recruit overall, committed to Ohio State in 22, but kept taking visits to other programs. Decommitted that December. Then later on committed to Georgia. Kept talking to the Nebraska folks. Then Matt Rule took over as coach at Nebraska. Then Raiola's uncle, Donovan Raiola, coaches the O-line, gets a substantial raise. Dad has connections. And lo and behold, when it's time to go to Athens, he decides, I'm not going to Athens this weekend. I'm going to Nebraska. And then, of course, we know how the story goes there. So that was the one story. But, of course, the flip of the flip that worked in the Dogs' favor was the flip of KJ Bolden, the 5-star safety out of Buford, number 16 recruit, number 1 overall safety. And, of course, someone who in August of 23 had committed to Florida State. Looked like it was good to go until it wasn't. Do you guys feel like those are 2 of the top 5 flips, like kind of moments for that early signing period?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, with KJ Bolden, that flip, who knows how that impacted what wound up happening with Caleb Downs, but the fact that you were able to get that level of safety, because that's what happened to Georgia last year, where it was like, all right, Caleb Downs might be going to Georgia, and then it was sort of like last minute he wound up going to Alabama. So that was massive. And then the Dylan Raiola thing, because this is still, like you mentioned it with the wide receivers in the first round with Georgia, like Kirby, as good as we've gotten the quarterback play, right? And Stetson had the 2 national titles, and Carson Beck, they still haven't been able to get like the consistent elite recruit at quarterback at Georgia for whatever reason. It just hasn't. I mean, you had Fields, but then he left, and Carson Beck is very, very, very good. But from a recruiting standpoint, he wasn't the top guy like a Dylan Raiola. So that's something that, Kirby still got to figure out, and they got to figure, because I mean, it boils down a lot of times to quarterback and quarterback play, especially over the last 10 or 15 years in college football, how it's worked. So yeah, they were probably the 2 biggest recruiting stories outside of other ones that were already in college, moving to different places like a Caleb Downs that I mentioned.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that, we talk about this whole quarterback piece is interesting because like you mentioned Justin Fields and you talk about, even when Jake Fromm was here, it seemed like he had all type of what's the quarterback from Washington, Jacob Eason.
Oh yeah.
You had Jacob Eason as well. So you just have these big time quarterbacks that just decide to say, you know what, Georgia isn't for me. And you have to wonder why. You have to sit up and say, why is this happening? And I think the Raiola situation is, I wouldn't necessarily put that all the way in that category with those two guys that I just mentioned, because like you said, you got your uncle there, your dad played there, and Unc just got a raise. It was like, hey man, I just got a raise. Like, you got to come on down here, So I just think that was it was a compromising situation that the young man had to do, because it just goes to show where we are in college football, because Dylan Raiola moved across the country just to go to high school
for half the I mean,
in Beaufort, in Georgia. Yeah. So you would think that he did that he wouldn't decide to decommit, but like I said, the circumstances just made a lot of sense that he would go to Nebraska, being that's where his father went to play school.
Yeah, I think the same. And it's one of those things where, hey, every time we see a flip of some sort, it shouldn't surprise us. And it shouldn't. And when I say it shouldn't surprise us, I think initially, like, my instant reaction for Dylan Raiola was, oh my God, like, how do you move cross country and then you move back to the middle of the country in the middle of nowhere, and you basically have been anointed to be that guy in Athens? Like, that piece for me was confusing. But then I'm like, you know what? Each person has their different motivations, and each person knows what it is that they want to experience. It's just like, and of course, different time, different rationale. But you think about a Peyton Manning where everybody thought he was headed to Ole Miss, but he wanted to create his own legacy, so he goes to Tennessee. However, you think in Eli, who's kind of like the different kid because he's so much younger than Cooper and Peyton, you're thinking, oh, he'll probably go and like do the same thing. Where does he go? Ole Miss. So I just say that to say sometimes it just depends on what's the motivating factor for that person, like the ultimate motivating factor. And I think too with KJ Bolden, it was one of those things where I think Georgia was probably always kind of on his heart and on his mind, and it just happened. And all of the things kind of came together, all the forces came together, and it worked out for him, and it worked out for the Dogs. Well, when we come back, speaking of some Dogs that things have worked out for quite well in the NFL, there are some Dogs that are going to be playing on the big stage this Sunday. We will talk about it in Next Up. Well. We talked about Super Bowl and the passion, the drive, and the patience that you have to have in order to get there, right? What brings home the winning trophy? That's what does it. Also, that's what keeps your drive, ride or die alive. You got to have passion to keep your car in good condition. You have to have the drive to be motivated to make sure that you do what needs to be done. But you also have to have patience with your baby, because sometimes, like mine, which is a little bit older, takes her a minute to get to where she needs to be. But eBay Motors can help you get there. Has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and of course, funky seat covers and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or in my case, style on the interior, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your parts guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber and not cash, with all the parts you need to prices you want. It's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions do apply, and eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. So guys, oh my goodness, T-minus 5 days. I don't know about you, but I'm like, whew, can we just get this thing on and pop it and just, be done with it? But I will say this. The one good thing is that we'll get an opportunity to see some Dogs representing in Super Bowl 58. Chiefs, it's McCole Hardman and Malik Herring. For the 49ers, it's Charlie Werner and Chris Conley, because, of course, Robert Beal is out on IR. And when I was thinking about this earlier, thinking about who could be that most impactful for his team to win. So I'm actually going to throw it to you guys on two questions. And it could be different teams, by the way. Who's the player, the potential dog who could be the most impactful in this game Sunday for you? And which team walks away with the win? Which dog walks away with the trophy?
Wow. I would have to go with it probably have to be, for me, it has to be McCole Hardman, right? Because you think about, going back to his former team, he was with the Jets, and we all know how that went down with Aaron Rodgers going down for the season, and he just disappearing up there in the green and white. And they eventually, end up bringing them back. So, and you've seen how, the guys like Rashee Rice, and they've been able to be consistent and, catching the football and no drops, and they've been playing clean, and Patrick Mahomes been playing so well. And McCole Hardman is good for one of those out of nowhere type, big type plays. So I think that, with how Patrick Mahomes been playing and how McCole Hardman has the ability to be one of those game breaking plays, because people can, let's be honest, he's not really, people aren't really checking for him like that on that level. So
right,
I really feel like he can be a guy that can make that big play to potentially be a game changer, which eventually get them to win. Like I believe they will.
Okay,
yeah. I agree. I think it's McCole Hardman. And we see this so much in these big games, right? There's so much talk about the offense and the defense and what happens. McCole is such a big part of the special teams for the Chiefs that there always seems like there's one or two big plays in the Super Bowl that are special teams related. And that could be anything from, a muff punt to a big return to kind of switch the momentum and switch the vibe of it. Plus, we know Andy Reid in these games too. He's going to take everything out of the bag that he's got. So don't be surprised if you see some sort of end around or some sort of double reverse. Remember, McCole was actually a quarterback back in the day too. He's had trick pass plays as well, so you could see some strange thing with him. I do think Charlie Warner is one of those quiet kind of important players in this game too, because the Chiefs are so good in the front seven, and Charlie Warner, for people who don't know, is kind of that second tight end for the 49ers. Pretty good blocking tight end, and they've got that good D line, good sneaky good linebacking core for Kansas City as well. So I think you'll have a pretty big impact on this game too. So, but I do think it's the Chiefs that ultimately wind up winning. It's just you can't pick against them now at this point.
Yeah.
I mean, they just keep doing it, and it's give me the Mahomes Reed combo over the Shanahan Purdy combo. I mean, it doesn't always boil down to just that, but the quarterback head coach is typically how these things play out. And I think Mahomes and company get their third Super Bowl on Sunday.
Yeah, and dare I say it's a sweep, because I said the same thing pre-production. For me, McCole Hardman is going to have that one or two plays that flip a field, or like you said, it's going to be some trickery that he can be utilized in. He's a guy that Andy Reid trusts, that Patrick Mahomes trusts, and I believe one or two plays he can be making the difference. And for me, I mean, I think it's going to be darn close. Wouldn't be shocked if the Niners win, but I'll be darned if I'm picking against Patrick Mahomes. Never done it. Kind of had a heart for Jalen Hurts, but kind of knew Patrick Mahomes was still going to get it done then, so I'm going to go for him. We'll see what kind of conversation we're having about our dogs who are going to be in the Super Bowl this coming Sunday when we come back next week. Appreciate you stopping by the Atlanta Football Party, your home for the best Georgia Bulldogs football talk. Like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and we're free and available wherever you download your podcast. Come back for the Atlanta Sports Party on Thursday.